One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. My name is Alex Mason and I am your host, and I am so grateful that you're joining me today because we are looking at investment banking concepts. This is the show, the only show that looks at both the technical and non-technical aspects of investment banking, breaks them down for you, explains them in the most simple and understandable way possible. That's my mission. That's my vision here for you because I'm learning all these things as an incoming MBA student, and I want you to learn this as well. So I'm grateful that you're listening. Today's topic, we're talking about discounted cash flows, going through all the basic concepts in this realm of knowledge. And I want to talk to you today about calculating the discount rates. The question is, how do you calculate the discount rates in your DCF model? And usually this is your WACC, or what's called your weighted average cost of capital. So remember when we went through the episode a few episodes ago about discount rate, your discount rate is kind of like your hurdle rate. And I'll explain exactly what that means. Once you have your levels of free cash flow, you've decided how long to project them for, we have to discount these cash flows back to the present. Remember, we're looking out in the future. We're saying we think this company is going to produce a certain amount of free cash flow at a certain point in time. Now we need to understand how much money is that equivalent to today, because that's going to help us value what the business is worth today. So how do we do that? How do we figure out what this discount rate is? And we remember that a discount rate signifies the required return of the business. And that's also known as its cost of capital. Basically, a business is financed by either equity or debt investors, many times both. And those investors are going to require a certain level of return on their money for investing in the enterprise. So therefore, the discount rate in our projections can be considered a hurdle rate that the company is expected to achieve in the coming years. And this discount rate is usually something called the weighted average cost of capital, or WACC. And usually people just say WACC, the WACC, WACC. And it could also be something called cost of equity, which is a component of WACC, but we'll discuss how to calculate WACC now and focus on that. So WACC, by definition, is a weighted average. If you remember a little bit of math from back in your earlier school days, what an average is, pretty simple. You take a bunch of numbers, you add them up, you divide it by the number of numbers, that's your average, right? And then what's a weighted average? Well, a weighted average is just the same thing as an average, except you're applying a certain weighting based on the structure of whatever you're calculating. So what we're doing here is a calculation taking the average cost of equity for a business, as well as the average cost of debt for a business, and then just weighting them according to whatever the capital structure of the business is. And I'll talk about this a little bit more here in a minute. But before I do, I just want to share with you the actual formula. What is the actual mathematical formula for your weighted average cost of capital? And it's this. Your WACC equals your cost of equity multiplied by your percentage of equity plus cost of debt multiplied by your percentage of debt multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate plus the cost of your preferred debt multiplied by the percentage of your preferred debt or your preferred shares. So the way that I think about this, that's a long formula, right? is I break it out into 3 sections. That helps me remember it. First, you've got the equity portion, your cost of equity times your percentage equity. Next, you've got your debt portion, which is your cost of debt multiplied by your percentage of debt multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate. And then you've got your preferred stock portion, cost of your preferred stock multiplied by percentage of preferred stock. Now, before we go into further detail, note that each section has this percentage factor that's multiplied by this cost factor. That percentage factor, that's the weighted part. That is what weights each factor against the others. So let's say if I have a startup that I'm raising capital for and I'm bootstrapping it with all equity and no debt, my equity percentage will be 100%. And my debt percentage and preferred percentage will be 0%. So I'm weighted 100% toward the equity. And then let's say have a different example. I'm in charge of a major corporation that's used to raising a lot of capital with both debt and equity. So maybe the capital structure is a little bit different. Let's say that I have 40% equity, 60% debt, and then no preferred shares, so 0% preferred. So that change in the ratios is going to affect the overall number of what WACC will be in my model. Okay? So let's look at the equity section. It's relatively simple. Cost of equity multiplied by percentage of equity. Seems simple enough, right? Well, percentage of equity, we just defined that. That's based on the capital structure. But the cost of equity is actually not so simple. And we'll get into that in a later episode as to different methods of calculating that part of the equation. So it's kind of these equations embedded in the equation. Don't let that scare you. It's just more concepts that we have to understand little by little. So we'll get to that. Now in the debt section, we have cost of debt multiplied by percentage of debt multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate. Well, the cost of debt, that's just the interest rate that you would expect a company to be able to borrow money at. If a company is well capitalized, it's relatively conservative, maybe you can get lower rates. But riskier companies have to pay higher rates of interest. It's just like when you borrow money yourself. Your interest rate is dependent on how good your credit score is. It's just like that for a company. And then also note that in this section, we're multiplying by 1 minus the tax rate. And the reason we're doing that is because interest is tax deductible for a business. So yeah, it costs a business money to borrow money, but they can write off part of that interest expense. So we're just accounting for the fact that they're saving a little bit in taxes there. That's why we do that. And then the preferred section of this equation, it's for preferred stock. It follows the same principle as the debt portion, but without any tax deductions. So that is the formula for WACC. In a nutshell, we have this equity portion multiplied by the debt portion multiplied by the preferred portion. And we can break down each of those components depending on the capital structure of the business, as well as things like the interest rate and other factors like cost of equity, which we'll get into. So that's how you calculate WACC. And usually that's what we're going to use for our discount rate. Okay, we did it. We covered WACC. Thanks for listening. This has been Investment Banking Insights. I'm so grateful for you listening. I see the download numbers every day. I see you reaching out to me on LinkedIn or email all the time now. And I'm just so grateful for you and your listenership. And I'm excited to bring more concepts to you next time. Have a great day.